Hello, Greenspring. Today is Wednesday, November 9th, 2016. I'm Fran Duval, your host for today, and happy to be here with two women that I happen to know and who live here in our wonderful community. And on my left is Gwen Lockhart, and on her left is Carol Tippett. Hello, ladies.
Hello,
morning.
And so we're going to look at what brought you into the working world and how you found it. In our years of getting into those ages of work, often we had to juggle things with being a wife and a mother or a caretaker or whatever, and somehow we figured out how to do a career or two. And so,
and you hope that in your family you have people who really totally support what you're doing and help you bring all these aspects together.
how about for you? Did that happen for you?
Yes, I had a very supportive husband. I don't have children, but I had a very supportive husband. And I had a childhood that gave me the strongest roots of about anybody I know.
Where'd you have that childhood?
In Kansas.
Kansas? You're not in Kansas anymore.
I know.
I know you've
But
heard that all your life.
I had a boss tell me one time he could see the hayseed in my hair, but he liked it. So with that, I decided, okay, it's fine to have hayseed.
Yeah. So you were able to have no trouble getting educated, getting jobs.
I had to work at it. I worked my way through college, yes, but it was an achievement. I just pushed myself, and Mother pushed me, and we went out there. I found what I needed and progressed. It was, my mother was the primary person, the primary instigator. I feel like I've been formed by my mother.
Oh, well, that's nice.
It is very much so. Great
so,
tribute to her.
And so you said you worked your way through college.
Yeah.
What kind of work were you doing?
Well, in Hutchinson Junior College, for those first 2 years, I was working as a general cashier at the Baker Hotel, and then I would substitute in the cafeteria or wherever they needed me. And then for the last 2 years, when I was at the University of Missouri, I had a student assistantship at journalism school. I was a journalism major.
You were studying journalism, okay.
And I had another job. I was a hostess cashier at Bryce's restaurant. And I think I mentioned to you one time that I loved homecoming weekend because I got to be coat check girl, and I made lots of money.
Lots of tips.
Lots of tips. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. And so did you get a job in journalism?
Partially. I've never, not to the degree one would expect. I worked at Sunset Magazine out in California for 2 years. Sunset is like Better Homes and Gardens, only it's for just the 8 western states.
I see.
It's got all of the various aspects of Better Homes and Gardens, plus travel. Loved working there, but I decided I needed something more exciting. So I ended up coming east and started working for Congressman Maillard from San Francisco.
And he was your representative from there?
He was, yes. And
what'd you do for Congressman Maillard?
I think I filled about every position in the office. I started out as receptionist, and then I was caseworker, and then I was office manager, and then I was in the San Francisco office. I don't think I even had a title. It was, go see her.
Yeah. Now, when you worked on the Hill, I mean, was most of your years with him on the Hill itself in Washington?
5 out of 7. The last 2 years I was in San Francisco.
Oh, okay, okay.
And the first 5 I was back and forth. You know how that works. During election year, staff goes out to complement the office out there. So I really enjoyed it. And then I got married and decided that a congressional office simply did not mix with marriage. No. The hours were just too erratic.
Exactly.
So I tried to find a committee I wanted to work for, and I thought I wanted to work for Judiciary or Foreign Affairs. And my boss, Congressman Maillard, spent one whole afternoon convincing me I wanted to work for Committee on Merchant Marine Fisheries. And that's where
with what?
Committee on Merchant Marine and Fisheries.
Merchant Marine and Fishery, yeah.
And have fabulous jurisdiction. All of the bird and bunny issues,
Sure.
Waterways, deep seabed mining, ocean dumping. That was one of our most exciting hearings ever. The committee had great jurisdiction, and Congressman Maillard was correct. I would have been bored
Was he
at Foreign
chair
Affairs.
of that committee?
He was on that committee, but he had also been on Foreign Affairs Committee. And he said, you don't want to work for Foreign Affairs. It's just too dry.
Yeah.
He said, it is interesting, but it's just dry. And he convinced me that I was better suited to Merchant Marine and Fisheries, and he was very
good
right.
for him
Yeah.
to recognize in you.
Yeah. We had the Endangered Species Act, we had 200-mile limit bill, we had fisheries conservation, the International Whaling Act. We had all those fun issues.
Yeah, a lot of those issues were, having been on the Hill myself, a lot of those issues were gave a lot of life enhancement and more benevolent kinds of things.
To bring you joy.
Exactly. Yeah. And to clean up things and to, all of that were things that were going to enhance our lives.
We obviously had shipping on the other side to counterbalance our happy jurisdiction. And that could get pretty intense. But now, I love the shipping too, international shipping.
Did that come under commerce or interior or what?
It was under Merchant Marine and Fisheries.
I mean,
and then when they disposed of the committee, this was after I left.
This was a full committee, not a subcommittee?
It was a full committee.
Oh, okay.
And after I left, they did do away with the committee, and jurisdiction was split between Public Works and Interior.
Yeah, I thought a lot of that. My boss was chair of Interior for years, and I thought a lot of those issues were in his bailiwick.
Well, there were a lot of things we shared with Interior, Alaska lands issues, and then a lot we didn't share with
all
Interior.
Things that are good for our country.
Oh, you're not kidding. they do bring you joy. They really do.
But I do understand the work schedule. I was the one person in our office who didn't have any other commitments. My children lived elsewhere, one in California, one in New York. I wasn't married. And I then pulled a lot of the late night duty, or the early morning duty, or the airport duty, or whatever, because a person who's just married or whatever would
it would test a marriage, I believe. On the committee, we did have long hours at certain periods of the year. Toward the end of the session, you could plan on working till midnight every night for about 2 weeks straight. My husband was very tolerant, and he just expected that.
What kind of work did he do?
He was in construction and eventually started his own little company. And we had we varied 10 to 14 employees. I worked for the company as well at night.
Good heavens, you had a lot of energy. Went to college, working through, geez.
I loved it, I really did. I loved the challenge, and I was bookkeeper for the company. I have to say, my long suit, truly, from all the testing I've been given, is math and everything related to math. And I think it's true. Somehow it does not go with all of my interests, but that's my long suit.
Surely you can find a way to match them up.
I do. It works fine for me.
And we don't want to forget, many here know you because of your sculpting, which you're going to do a separate show about.
Next week.
On your wonderful art. But you came to that later, right?
Yes, just in the last 23 years.
Yeah, so
the rest of my life
several careers.
Yes, indeed I have.
And always felt supported.
Always felt supported.
Didn't run into any, and your work was important.
I don't know why, but I have always had more than my share of confidence, and it's kind of a shameful thing to say. I mean, to say that out loud, people think, oh my gosh, I don't even want to know her. But
talk
I've
about
always,
braggadocio.
but I don't mean it that way. I just have never felt intimidated about anything.
That's wonderful.
I would give anything a try once.
Okay.
If I fail, I fail.
And you know, let me skip over to Carol for a few minutes. Carol Tippett. Carol's a fairly new person here. You haven't been here 2 years yet.
No, I've been here about 16 months.
16 months. And I met Carol because she's one of the Greenspring players, and you'll see her in this upcoming play. And the butler did it. And I'm not going to tell him who did it.
I hope not.
Carol, now what has your kind of working life been like?
I never stopped working when I had children. I started working right out of college, and then was married 5 years later, and then the first child came along about 3 years after that. And so I worked part-time while I was raising children, but I really never stopped working for more than a couple of months when each child was born.
What kind of work?
Well, I graduated from college with a degree in chemistry, and I guess it's true even to this day, but in those days, if you wanted to do anything in research, which was sort of my dream, you had to have a PhD. I was one of 4 children, and so going to graduate school for a PhD was not financially possible. So my first job was with DuPont, and that was in the days when the chemical industry was fighting a big problem because they had all these research reports on the shelves, but nobody knew how to get to the information that was in them. And so that was sort of the beginning of computerized indexes and databases. And that's what I started out doing for them, and really never got out of that information retrieval, information science niche.
Wow, so you were on the cutting edge of that, really.
Yes.
With computers, and probably they didn't have any individual computers at that time. Right?
No, no, it was all big mainframes.
Big mainframe,
Yep.
mainframes. I always
Right.
found that hard to say, the phrase.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, and this research that you were doing, were there other people?
Well, I really wasn't doing the research.
Not the research, the retrieval.
Yes. Oh, yes, there were other people that were doing it. I worked on one project that involved patents, indexing of patents and putting the index material onto, we used punch cards back in those days.
Sure.
All of the data went on punch cards and then
Sure.
was read into the,
Did that too.
to the mainframe.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Randolph-Macon Women's College, which is
sure.
now Randolph College because
Yes,
it's co-ed.
It is.
Yeah. And my mother went there, and I grew up hearing her talk about it, and so she was.
So you're kind of a local person.
Yes, I lived in Wilmington for a little bit, and I grew up in Baltimore, and lived most of my life in Maryland, and just moved to Virginia 16 months ago.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's really interesting. We haven't had a chance to really dig into this. Now, didn't you tell me, though, that you had other jobs along the way?
Well, I worked after leaving DuPont, I had a very short tenure with a small company that manufactured a piece of information retrieval equipment. And then I went to work for a large research institute, Battelle, which is based in Columbus,
Sure.
Ohio. I worked in the Washington office, but spent a lot of time in Columbus. Got to know Columbus pretty well. So I worked for them for 27 and a half years until it got to the point where the only way they could give me a raise was to put me in the management track, and that was not for me.
Now, were there other women in these jobs, or were you kind of a lone ranger?
Oh, no, there were other women in these jobs, and probably for the same reason I was, that they were graduating with degrees in chemistry and or in the sciences, and were not in the position of going to grad school, and so so yes, there were other women.
Well, then DuPont capitalized on this group of
Right.
women who. What years were that? What were those?
Early 60s.
Okay. Yeah, and so you were in Wilmington, in Delaware.
That's correct.
Not Wilmington, North Carolina.
No.
Isn't there a Wilmington, North
There is a
It is.
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yeah. So what did your family think of that you're working?
You mean my...
Like your mother?
Well, it was, they were always very encouraging. My father was really my inspiration because he had such a very strong feeling about the work ethic. My father went to work at the age of 15. He quit school in order to help support the family, and then retired at the age of 65 as president and chairman of the board of a Fortune 500 company. And he always told me that when you go to work, it's like signing a contract, which of course people do nowadays, but back in the 60s, you didn't sign employment contracts. You just agreed. They sent you a letter and you agreed to go to work. He always taught me that basically, when you go to work for a company, it's like a contract in which the company agrees to pay you so much, and in return, you should put forth your best effort of every minute, of every hour, of every day. And that was the attitude that I took with me to all of my employment positions.
Well, it sort of was a generational
I think so.
idea of how
I
to
think so.
work. But did you have that same kind of
ethics?
Ethic, yeah. And I too. I though feel like we were on a good side of the workforce because we were able to have jobs that took us through our lifetime or till our retirement and that sort of thing. So many people now don't have that job security that I always felt that I had it. I too came out of going, putting myself through college after, I was 40 when I went to college, and working full-time at UVA and going to school full-time at Mary Baldwin College and living in between the two of them and constantly I had a sign on my apartment door, "Do not disturb." And one day somebody knocked on the door one Saturday and I thought, who doesn't know how to read? Because I was studying, and I go to the door and I was really angry. And it was my neighbor bringing me 2 bottles of one of canned peaches and one of canned green beans. And then I felt bad that I had, who's at my door?
Fierce.
Anyway, but she didn't want to come in and have coffee or anything. She just wanted to give me those. But anyhow, I had jobs that were demanding and that people recognized. I also had jobs where there was a lot of there were certain amount of certainly what would today be called sexual harassment, but women
Definitely.
never would have reported anything like that.
Sidestepped it and went on.
And that's right. Went home crying one day. Crying. My mother said, "What is wrong? What is wrong?"
That's interesting because I never personally experienced anything like that, and I was never aware of it happening in my surroundings. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
The Hill environment may have made the difference.
Well,
you never
it
know.
was in academia
Oh, okay.
at that point,
Yeah.
and I won't name the college, but anyhow, but no, when I told my mother, and she was just horrified, and she said, you just have to ignore it. And then I went into work on Monday, and I had lost my job. It was somewhere, because I had run away from and I had run out of the building. And it scared me to death, frightened me to death. I was about 19. And I went in Monday, I didn't have a job, but I could take a job down in the civil engineering department if I wanted to. So I did take it because I needed a job, but yeah. So I had that kind of scare that I recognized that could have been awful. I was lucky I had the guts, I guess, to say goodbye and just get out of that room. Because the person was a person of power. Obviously, I got fired.
And I guess it was in our upbringing that our reaction is just sidestep it
Yeah, I mean,
or run. I mean, either way
well,
the word
right.
applies.
yeah, and you wouldn't report that or anything.
No.
Because, well, partly because you feel that you must have caused it. I mean, that was another way that women thought in those days. I think they're much more savvy about that now.
Yeah.
And I look at my own children. My daughter, when she worked for Time magazine, and when she would say to me, reporter came in, and he asked me where the coffee was, and I said, it's down the hall, da da da. And in my day, I would have gone and gotten the coffee.
Yeah, that's true.
Because my jobs were always in support staff. They were always secretarial in nature, or I was the so-called business manager of the Patents Foundation at UVA for 4 years. And after I got my college degree, I got this job, and that was a fascinating job of the inventions that coming out of research at the university and getting them patented and licensed. That was a really exciting job. So, but then I wanted to move back to D.C. because I grew up around here.
Yeah.
So, only in Maryland rather than in Virginia.
So you both are Marylanders at
Yeah,
heart.
I was born in Maryland. And so, went to school in D.C. all my life, all my grade school, high school, Catholic schools, Catholic girls' school in the upper grades.
Were they small schools? I would
Oh,
imagine
yes.
that.
Are you
okay.
kidding? Graduating class was like 40 people.
Oh, mine was 18.
Oh, my gosh.
Mine was about 400.
See, big
Yeah.
difference there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what this program is really about is that in our generation, there were people that were able to succeed in careers, balancing and juggling all of their other either interests or demands on their time or whatever.
And we crossed a lot of hurdles as far as pay and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're mentioning you had reached the point that they would have to put you in management to give you a raise. That's how the system works.
That's right.
But I think we crossed a lot of hurdles on that score, particularly that score.
Yeah, there's certainly more respect for the work you do and what it's worth, and to find that right place where
Equal pay for equal
it
work.
will happen to you.
Yeah.
It's important because we know that corporations or governments, they have a bottom line that they work from, and they're going to get you as cheap as they can.
Right.
So,
That's the way it works. I was also in charge of budgeting, all of our committee budget.
oh, on the committee.
Yeah. That was a big budget. It was
Yeah,
like
several.
3 or 4 million.
How many million?
It was 3 or 4 million. And then when I was with the Art League in Old Town, in Alexandria, that budget was about 2 million. So I've always been on the budget end, but it's because I like those numbers.
You like that math? You like dealing
I
with
like
all
that math. I really do.
But now,
It's kind of a side interest.
Now, okay, so you hadn't mentioned before the Alexandria thing, but didn't you also work for Country Living or Southern
Sunset,
Living?
it was Sunset Magazine, and they had travel, cooking, gardening, and one other aspect.
It wasn't
Anyway,
Southern Living.
No, it wasn't Southern
No, it
Living.
wasn't Southern.
Sunset helped start Southern Living.
I see.
Sunset was for the 8 western states. They did not consider that competition, so they sent our staff to help them set up Southern Living in a comparable way that Sunset was set up.
So what did you do for this company? Did you actually do any journalism, any writing, any?
Very little, very
Okay.
little. I was secretary of the president, and I did get to go on trips, and I did some reporting on specific items, but that was it.
Okay.
I was primarily secretary. After that, on the Hill, I used my journalism every time I turned around. But it was not considered true journalism,
No,
but
it was
the writing
reporting
aspect,
and
the
that sort of thing.
editing, every aspect of what I had learned, I was
Sure,
exercising.
Sure. And it's so important on those, the Hill, the documents that come out of the committees
Yeah.
and go up to the members. It's really amazing.
And I was the last person to go over something before it came out the member's mouth, so if it was wrong,
Oh, boy.
my head was in trouble.
Well, or probably they'd see it on the front page of the Washington Post in the morning. You know what, ladies, we're going to bring this to an end, and thank you very much, both of you, for coming. I want you to just kind of stay put a minute while we do whatever we're going to do next. I think we're going to have a little plug for the Staff Appreciation Fund. So I hope everybody has given to that. So let's go to that.